Hey, you know who's great? You are. Because if you're watching this video, you care about helping children and students develop a growth mindset at school. Thank you! So instead of reading this, or this, here are 5 ways to help students and children develop a growth mindset that are guaranteed to transform the way they learn. Check it out! If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe to this channel where we choose growth, gratitude, and joy for a carefree and a financially free lifestyle. Now, a growth mindset is something we should see a lot of in schools. Growth and learning tend to go hand in hand. So then why is it that schools are set up from a fixed mindset perspective? Let me explain. My good friend Carol Dweck, who I've never actually met, tells us about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. In its simplest form, a fixed mindset believes that our intelligence and skills are fixed traits that we're born with, and that success is a result of talent and not effort. By contrast, a growth mindset believes in the power of perseverance. A growth mindset believes that people are able to build off of what they're given at birth to achieve anything they put their minds to. A growth mindset also believes that people who are successful have put in countless hours to get to the point where they are a master of their craft. So let's talk about 5 things that can be done in schools to transform classrooms from fixed mindset classrooms to growth mindset classrooms. The first and probably most important thing that can be done is changing the way that we speak to students and parents about marks. Throughout my career as a teacher so far, I've worked in a very prestigious international boarding school where some of the wealthiest and most successful people on the planet have sent their children. Needless to say, I've had some really intense parent interviews that surround the topic of marks. What I've learned is that people who send their children to prestigious international boarding schools really want their children to get high marks. It's no surprise, they pay a lot of money, so they want to see results. Now, these types of people tend to equate high grades with results. Now, this is a very fixed mindset perspective, and it's very detrimental to student learning. Here's why. Students who see marks as an achievement tend to internalize their results and start to attach them to their self-worth. They sort of become the mark, so to speak. Students with good grades become the smart kid, and students with low grades become the not smart kid. There's this myth in schools and in families that if you get good grades, you get to go to a good school, get a good job, and make lots of money, which is good. But with that comes the idea that if you don't get good grades, you won't get any of those things. And this is wrong. This just isn't true. Remember that people with a fixed mindset believe that there's no way to change your ability. If you're bad at math, you're always going to be bad at math. To change this in the classroom, all we need to do is change the way we communicate about grades. And perhaps the most important part of that is providing feedback that helps students understand where they went wrong. By doing this, we're communicating to students how to improve and how to level up from a poor result. Doing this changes the perspective of the student from "I am a failure" to "I failed, that's okay, here's how I improve." Teachers need to leave good, powerful feedback so that students move past the grade value and focus more on how they can improve themselves for next time. Growth mindset. The second thing to do to introduce students to a growth mindset at school is to normalize mistakes. And I'm not talking just about grades. Think back to a teacher you had that at some point made a mistake. This probably isn't very hard to do because when that teacher made a mistake, the entire class probably laughed at them, ridiculed them, and all of a sudden they lost all sense of credibility. This is because teachers are seen as a source of knowledge, which makes sense. They're experts in their field. They should be knowledgeable enough to teach children. They shouldn't make mistakes, right? So we know that a fixed mindset perspective believes that mistakes are indicative of weakness. They show us a gap in a skill set that can't be developed. Teachers and students who believe that teachers can't make mistakes are contributing to a very negative and fixed mindset classroom culture. These are the classrooms where students are afraid to put up their hands to answer questions. They're afraid of making mistakes. To fix this in my classroom, I worked really hard to make mistakes, failure, and struggling part of my classroom culture. This meant that I had to show my students that it was okay for me to make mistakes. As a math teacher, I stopped trying to make my lessons perfect, and I tried to just make problem solving raw and organic. If I made a mistake, I would own it, and I mean like really own it. I wouldn't try to hide the mistake. I would call attention to the mistake. I would show the students what would happen if I carried on in my solution without correcting the mistake. I would turn that mistake into a seriously teachable moment that students wouldn't forget. I would take entire lesson plans and throw them in the garbage because I didn't spend the entire period having my class help me fix my mistake. And I can guarantee you that they learn more from that exercise than they would have if I just stood at the front of the class and simply solved a problem. Make mistakes in your classroom. They're not indicative of your intelligence, and they're not indicative of your abilities as a teacher. Instead, the way that we react to mistakes is much more powerful than showing that we're knowledgeable about our subject. Teachers know that positively praising students is one way to engage them in class conversation. By telling students that they're doing a good job, they're more likely to raise their hand and participate, which of course leads to deeper student learning. However, if we aren't careful with the way we award praise, we can send the wrong message to our classes. In Carol Dweck's Mindset, she summarizes a study that she conducted on a group of students. Her team praised one group of students for being very smart, while praising another group of students for the effort they put into solving a problem. For example, they would say, "Wow, you got all the questions correct. You are so smart." Or they would say, "Wow, you got all the questions correct. You must have worked really hard." Now, what they found is that the group of students that were told they were smart were less likely to take on a second, more challenging problem. The students who were told that they had worked really hard were more willing to accept a second, more challenging problem. The students who were praised for their efforts didn't feel like they had some sort of special gift that made them so smart. A fixed mindset would be afraid of taking on a new challenge for fear that their status of being smart would somehow be compromised. So in the classroom, and just with our own children in general, it's really important that we pay attention to how we give praise. Are we setting them up to be nervous that they're going to make a mistake eventually? Or are we showing them that putting in the effort can help them solve any sort of challenge they put their mind to? Much like getting a low mark or making mistakes, failure has a bad reputation in the classroom. Students aren't supposed to fail. In fact, I used to be so afraid of my students failing because I used to think that parents and administrators would look at me as the teacher and point the finger and assume that I did something wrong to cause the student to fail. In the early stages of my career, I used to sort of avoid them because I didn't really know how to work with those types of students. But by modeling a growth mindset in my classroom, I was able to show students that failure was not a permanent state of being, but rather feedback on how to not fail next time. Now, this can be really hard when you're working with a student who perpetually fails things. They may even come into your classroom with a label attached to them that they are a failing student, rather than just perpetuating this label. Get to know them and their interests a little better. Greet them at the door and show them that you're a friendly person who's there to help them succeed. Remind them that just because they might be failing in your class doesn't mean that they're not good at other things. You can show them that they have other things they are good at that are valuable. By bringing those conversations into your classroom, they'll see you as someone who is willing to help them improve. Many times students who fail don't even care about the feedback you leave them because they're so used to failing. If failing students see you as a caring person, they will listen to your feedback and they will use it to improve. Now, the last thing you can do to help students at school understand how to use a growth mindset is to use growth mindset quotes. There are some incredibly powerful quotes out there that remind us how to react to struggles and mistakes and failures. Quotes tend to mean something different for every person. We attach our own experiences to the quotes we hear. So there's this very personal sense of motivation that comes from hearing quotes. Quotes that relate to growth mindset help students remember not to give up. Including quotes in your teaching is incredibly easy. You can print off quotes and hang them around the room to motivate students throughout your lessons. You can print a growth mindset quote and set it on each student's desk to set a growth mindset tone to your lesson that sets your students up for success. And you can integrate your favorite quotes into your lessons. If you have students who complain about how easy things are, you can remind them that the person who thinks they know everything learns nothing. Or if you have students who are jealous of other students being smarter than they are, Einstein's quote, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stick with problems longer," will remind them that anything's possible as long as they choose to continue pursuing it. Check out the link in the description below for 45 growth mindset quotes that will motivate and inspire your students to transform their mindset at school. Modeling the growth mindset at school can be tricky, especially if you work in a school that perpetuates a fixed mindset. Just remember that teachers have a lot of power. Not only do they influence what students learn, but they also influence how students learn. Take the opportunity to introduce the growth mindset to your students and watch them transform into open-minded, creative problem solvers that embrace struggles rather than running from it. Hey, if you like this video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and check out our blog in the description below for more on growth mindset. Thanks for watching.